So today, Zach, I just thought let's just go after what everyone wants to know about, what everyone's talking about, which is tariffs, right? And a lot of people are wondering how that's going to affect the housing market, if it will affect the housing market. So for me, I'm like, I guess the short answer would be like, well, yeah, like if all of this stuff goes through as proposed, like if there are going to be these tariffs, it's the biggest thing would obviously be the lumber, the supplies for housing. But then again, that's new construction. So, I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's funny. So this last week in the markets was a fun week. We lost a lot of ground in the bond market where interest rates ticked up about 3/8 to 0.5%. We gained back some of that today, which is good. But I look at that, it's like, okay, whenever there's a little bit of volatility, interest rates can change, right? Good or bad. And then I also thought it was funny. On Friday, we had an inflation report coming out. Inflation report came out actually pretty well, and it didn't even have any effect on the markets because they're like, we don't care about whatever this inflation report is. What is going on with tariffs? And so, as I look at it, the tariffs are there's good and bad with them as far as a number of different things. But like one thing could be if we all of a sudden say, hey, we're going to charge tariffs, likely prices for certain materials, especially like you said with new construction, they're going to tick up. Like if it costs an extra 2 or 3 grand in, materials like for lumber, well, that's going to be factored in somewhere, right? I don't think the builder's going to come out and say, oh, don't worry about that. I'm going to eat that 3 grand on lumber that costs extra now because of the tariff. They're going to pass that on to the consumer. And so that's the biggest thing is likely, depending on where it all falls over the next 60 to 90 days, that'll dictate, what does new construction look like? What do home prices kind of look like for that front? So it's gonna be
Well,
good.
and I just want to say, so, there's always going to be something, right? Like if because a while ago it was like the elections. When the elections are over, then people can make a decision in a housing market. But here's my question. When is the best time to buy a house?
Ooh, that's always a good question, right? It was probably like October of 2024 was a good time, right?
Well, and
There's a
I just
bunch of
want to say
different ones, but
yesterday. I mean, the
oh,
general answer, like it's
it's yesterday,
yesterday.
right?
I've never
There's
heard
little
anyone
pockets and
complain.
windows, right? As we look
Yeah.
at it, there's always these pockets and windows where it's able to get a good. I think we have a good pocket right now. It kind of feels like almost when we were going into COVID, there was enough uncertainty with COVID that people that purchased homes during the beginning of it really fared well. And I think we're going through another piece or another, time where there's a little bit of uncertainty, but those that are willing to kind of say, okay, we know it's not a perfect market, but it's a good enough market to get into. And those are the ones that are going to benefit out of this.
Well, and when everyone else is panicking and freaking out, like your future self is going to thank you for just making the leap. And it's actually, I love how Warren Buffett says, be greedy when other people are fearful and be fearful when other people are greedy. So right now there's a lot of fear-based around the real estate market and people are concerned about rates, they're concerned about the tariffs, they're concerned about the recession, inflation, like there's so many things being thrown out around there that it's like, well, when is the best time? Yesterday. Like, let's do it. Like, if we can get you in, we can, like, prices have stabilized. There's some stabilization that's happening that's really, really nice because we had a crazy run up. And now at this point, there's some stabilization. I feel like that right now, for the most part, it's beneficial for both buyer and seller. And that's a hard market to find when both buyer and seller are equally feeling like they have a little bit of, win, right?
Right.
So I also wanted to this is all of the headlines right now. Everything is negative, right? Like people are worried about everything. And the big one, like you hear, is like the recessions. So it says recession is going to destroy the homeowners. There's recessions coming, and it's I mean, everything is negative. And I think what we need to remember about headlines is that they're meant to terrify, not clarify. And the scarier the headline, the more fear that it can create, the bigger response that they're going to get. So even in talking about, explaining things like go negative, freak people out, because then you'll get attention, right? Um,
Right.
so I think it's important that we clarify because there's so many, they'll pick one little piece of the puzzle, like talking about short sales and foreclosures. Like there's a big thing saying just you wait, there's going to be a whole bunch of foreclosures and short sales. What do you think about that?
It's a different market. So a lot of people are trying to compare this to the '07, '08 market, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're two separate markets. I've probably listened to like 20 or 30 hours of podcasts about that specifically, of like what are the differences that we're seeing between 2008 and right now. Because, I agree. There definitely was a run up in 2006, 2007, and there's definitely been a run up basically since COVID of 2020, 2021 up until now.
Yeah.
But what we're looking at, from what I'm seeing, the main thing is equities and how much people owe on those homes and in comparison to what they're worth. So if we go to the next slide, I think we've got some good
Okay.
data here around it.
Yeah.
So for instance, 39.3% of people have their home paid off. It's free and clear. All they have to do is pay taxes and insurance on the thing, and they pass go and collect it. And it's a great place to be. I'm so happy that, 40% of America is at that spot, basically. And then if
Yeah.
we look at the other portion, we've got 29.3 that own more than 50% equity of that home. So I just look at that and the mortgage brain in me goes off and is like, well, their payments are probably really low if they own 50% or more, because more than likely they probably purchased before 2020 and they probably got a refi between 2020 and 2023. So they're probably sitting on a really low interest rate and not a huge loan amount on that. So the payment's probably like 1,000, maybe 1,500 for that other 30%. And so that's kind of crazy to think about, that between those two numbers, I think it's around like 68.6% have a really, really good position where they're not going to be walking away from it unless they need to, right? And if they do need to walk away, they would just say, okay, let's sell the home, get out as much as we can for it, and move on to the next place. So
Yeah. Yeah. And interestingly enough, so I have a client who was so excited, called me and said, Janet, there's this short sale and they're selling this house for $350,000. It's like a house and it's 350,000. And the short sale means that it'll be quick. Like I'm thinking like what, like 2 weeks? Do you think we could close like in 2 weeks? Because isn't that what they mean? And I was like, no, that's not the definition of short sell. Definition of short sell means that the bank is coming up short. Therefore, we're going to have to wait for the bank approval, and it's actually a really, really long, undefined process amount of time. So, did your screen go lighter, or can you still see me clearly?
I can still see you. Yep.
Okay, perfect. So anyway, we're going through this process, and basically, at the end of the day, in talking to the listing agent, A, he was really, really struggling to get the bank to even respond. B, like the house had water damage, active water damage that was not being addressed. He said basically there's mold everywhere and everything was destroyed. He was telling me it was going to be a good 150,000. He said that's a really kind estimate for what's going to be put into this home because it's so destroyed by this water damage and mold at this point. So what was this great deal was not a great deal. And when you have very, very few short sales like you do right now, the banks are not willing to just give it away. There's no reason for them to give it away. They're going to get the best value at the state that it's in. So it's a very interesting thing. People think that you're going to have this great deal. Not the case. Not the case at all. So that's interesting. And then
Well,
this one,
another side that I sometimes look at is we look at delinquency rates on conventional loans and FHA loans. And those delinquencies have stayed pretty darn low for the last 5, 6 years. During COVID, you had, forbearance and different things like that, but
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't see those going off the rails right now either, just from the data that we've been getting. Delinquencies are,
yeah,
staying in check for the most part.
yeah. Yeah. Well, and then you were kind of talking about this. So talk about this last slide, kind of what you were talking about with mortgages and stuff.
Yeah, so as we look at it, here's the interest rate. So we have 21.3% have a 3% or lower interest rate. And then from 3% to 3.99%, you've got, another third essentially. And so right there you have over 50% of total mortgages are 3.99% or lower. And then you have the other parts that are 4% to above 6%. But it just shows me that like the vast majority of people that are holding on to real estate, it's either paid off or it's in really low interest rate debt, which leads me to believe this is not going to be another '08 by any means. I think if we see inflation, tick up, it's going to be a one-time thing. And it'll be interesting to see how the Federal Reserve even puts that into their analysis because they're likely going to say, well, because it's a one-time event, that can't be controlled by anybody outside of a very select few. They're probably going to say, this will flush itself out over the next 12 months in our CPI, PCE reports. I think they'll kind of just disregard it for the most part and say, this is a one-time event and an unusual event at that we're not even going to factor it into our rate cuts
Yeah.
and different things like that. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And I have found that, like, honestly, I really do feel like we have a great, strong market. People disagree with me because of what the media is saying. But like I said, I'll repeat it. Both sellers and buyers can be happy in today's market. Now, of course, you have sellers who want it to be like it used to be, where they could make up all the rules, right? They could overprice and then they could dominate all the negotiations. And I still feel that pushback when I'm working with clients. Like right now, I have a seller who doesn't want to do anything for us. And we have some pretty big ticket items that we need to be addressed in their functionality and their safety. But the seller's like, no, 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 like we already negotiated, like we don't want to do anything more. But then you also have buyers who are like, well, we should ask for this much off and this much in closing. Like we should just go for the heart, for the throat, right? So there
right.
actually is kind of a great medium. And it's not bad to have a house sit on the market for 30, 90 days. That's not the end of the world. But people are kind of like, they're trapped either in what the media is saying or they're trapped in like what happened in the past. So there's an interesting feeling. And the biggest thing that I can say about real estate is that it's highly, highly, highly emotional. Real estate is very emotional. So logic kind of goes out the window anyway in real estate. But add on top of it, all of these news headlines that are trying to just terrify people, and it's working. It's causing people to like sit back. But that's where I say, jump in, like come and work with us, like get an idea of what your payments are going to be, figure out what the market looks like, or let's talk about getting your house on the market so that you can downsize, upsize, whatever it needs to be, because I think people will be generally surprised when they see the truth of the market versus what they're being told.
Love it.
Well, I appreciate your insight always. I love that you do so much research and that you're so on top of the market. That's why I love working with you. And yeah, I would love to hear people's questions, comments, and we'd love to just get some good connections so that we can guide people home. Thanks.
Take
Appreciate
care.
you.